G'day guys, Blake here with another video, and I'm sure everyone's well aware by now that within the last few months I moved house into this brand new fish room, and I thought today it would be handy for some of you out there to run through some of the provisions that I made sure were going into this fish room before I moved in. So if any of you out there are looking to move or set up a new fish room, then hopefully this video can help. But let's jump straight into it today and talk about some of the things you may want to include in your next fish room. Let's do it. Okay, so to get started, I was fortunate that we actually built this house, so there were some things that I could put in from scratch, but that's not to say that an existing house, you won't be able to add these on later. It might just require, sourcing an electrician to put in some things or a plumber. It might just be a little bit more difficult depending on whether you're starting from scratch or not. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is probably the most favorite thing about this room, and that's right behind me here. It's kind of a weird background to choose for this scene, but I deliberately wanted to leave this utility sink in there. So for this reason, in the build, it actually ended up being a pretty expensive inclusion, so you'll have to keep that in mind if you are building, because basically the foundation of the garage steps down a little bit, and there wasn't supposed to be any plumbing in this area of the slab, so it ended up costing actually a few $1,000s to have provisions in this area for a tap and a drain and all those sorts of things. But I'm so glad that I did it. Having a utility sink is so easy. It makes cleaning out sponge filters a dream. It makes filling and draining tanks super easy. And it just gives me a lot more flexibility rather than having to come up with some sort of maybe water storage solution or run a bunch of plumbing throughout the house or something like that, rather than just having it over there. But there's not really that much to it, just a stainless steel sink and some hot and cold water with a mixer. And another consideration to keep in mind if you do have a water source in your garage is to make sure that the tap mixer is actually supportive of one of these guys here. This is a tap adapter. I just picked it up from Bunnings. And the cool thing about this is you can unscrew this little stainless steel piece that comes with your original mixer, swap it in for this one, and then very simply you can lock in a hose connection. Then all of a sudden, filling and draining just becomes a lot easier. You've got firm connections and you can run that pressurized water at the temperature you desire straight into your aquarium. So I think an absolute must in any fish room for me moving forward is having a water source and being able to connect up a hose to it. The next thing I wanted in this room is lots and lots of power. So this house, we've got it set up on a 3-phase system, which I don't know all that much about electricity, but I know that it can support a lot more draw at one particular time. So if you've got an older place that you've lived in before, and sometimes you'll notice if you turn on the microwave and the toaster at the same time, you'll short out your power. Well, in that circumstance, what 3-phase will do is more evenly spread the demand at any given time. So you might have some heavy drawing appliances split across those phases so that the microwave will be running on one phase and the fridge or air conditioner or whatever will run on another one. That's kind of my simple understanding of it, but I did know that the amount of draw coming out of this fish room, I was gonna absolutely need some 3-phase power so that we don't accidentally trip things over, which was an issue at the old place. As well as that, I wanted lots and lots of power outlets or power points. So in this room, I've actually got 10 double power points. So 20 outlets of power that I can plug into. And a rule that I set for myself was to have no more daisy chaining of power boards. At the old house, really wouldn't recommend it, but I had extension cords running into power boards, usually 6 outlet power boards, and then I'd have another extension cord in there to another 6-board power board, and then occasionally I'd even have another extension cord with another 6-bay power board, which was very silly, and I would not recommend it at all. Part of that as well was that middle row that I had set up at the old place, but for now I've set myself the rule of no daisy chaining of power boards. So 20 power points here to choose from, and they're spread all across the room at about sort of chest height. So you can see, if we imagine right here behind me, there's one right in the center of that aquarium there. There's another one in the center of that aquarium there. There's one mounted up high, which purposefully put up there for my air pump. Along this wall, there's two at bench height behind all of these nano aquariums. Along this wall, there's a few as well, about every meter or meter and a half, pretty much behind the 4-foot aquariums and all the way to the front of the room. But if you are planning to run heaters, lights, maybe powered filters as well, like canister filters or internal filters, then it's a really good idea to account for more power than you'll actually need. And this will also help your builder, if you are building a new place, to calculate the amount of power that you might draw at one given time and assess your need for 3-phase power or an upgraded circuit board. Speaking of the air pump, you can probably guess that it would be incredibly inefficient to run 50 powered filters. So I've of course opted for sponge filtration in this room. And you can see from the air pump here, we have a piece of PVC pipe that runs in an entire loop in the top of the room. And just some simple clips and PVC pipe, some PVC joiners and PVC glue, mainly because I couldn't get the lengths to actually work in a trailer or a long vehicle. But if you could have really long lengths delivered, then you probably wouldn't even need to join them. And once you've got a working PVC loop for your air, it's so easy to add any extra filters, set up new tanks and everything like that. Simply drill in, screw in a little barb fitting and off you go. This pump here that I use in particular is a Resun LP60. I run 50 tanks off it, and a lot of the tanks have more than one sponge filter in there, so I probably have about 80 connections running off of it, and it's still running perfectly fine. So I find it to be a really versatile size. Anything between the sort of 20 tanks to 50 tanks, it'll do the job. Now the next consideration you're not going to be able to see because it's inside the walls and above the roof, and you can ask your builder in a new build home to either upgrade or install insulation in your walls and your roof. So definitely ask the question, because it's not always an inclusion for builders to incorporate insulation in all the walls and all of the roof. It's going to be something that depends on your particular builder, your area that you're building in, and any sort of green star ratings or energy efficiency ratings that you've got on your house. But it's always worthwhile asking, what sort of insulation am I going to have in the house, and how can we improve that? So it's definitely worth asking the question and upgrading that insulation, especially if you are planning on heating the room. Now here's a view you'll probably never see before. This is my garage door, and that's because my fish room is in a garage, but I definitely was conscious that the garage door might leak a lot of air. Generally there's huge air gaps with any garage door, and that's something that I wanted to avoid. So you might notice that there's a lot of green foam paneling on here, and that's something that I installed myself. I looked into the custom garage door installation that you can get, and I realized that typically it's just 30mm styrofoam. So I went into my local hardware store, Bunnings, and picked up some of this foil board here, cut it into sections. Really straightforward process. I just used a box cutter or Stanley knife. Really straightforward, and it was up, within a day or so. So definitely something that I would recommend doing, whether you're going to heat the room or not. It's really going to help to contain the heat, and there has been a noticeable difference on hot days, especially, that the room isn't really getting belted with heat like it was before this door was insulated. So definitely recommend picking up a few sections of foil board or another piece of styrofoam that you might be able to access and attach it to the back of your door. Super simple, and it's really lightweight as well, so there's no issues with the mechanism of your garage door. Now once I did that, I was in here actually with the lights off, and I did notice that there was quite a lot of light coming in around the sides and the top of the garage door, which was obviously because there was some gaps between the brickwork and the door. I started to fill up the sides with some expanding foam, but that didn't really do much of the trick, so we'll head outside and I'll show you the next solution for attempting to insulate the room a little bit better. Okay, so outside now, hopefully the wind isn't too much of an issue, but here you can see the next thing that I put into place to better insulate this room. This is a product called Shore Seal, and basically it's that sort of brush that you might see on the bottom of some external doors, and it just really helps to create a nice air gap between the garage door and the brickwork, which is hard to achieve with anything solid. So it was really easy to install. I did it all myself. Just get a hammer drill, make a little hole, and then screw these plugs in. Something that's really, really simple to do, doesn't need many tools at all, and again, a really, really noticeable difference. The whole kit for this garage door, which is the largest option available, was I think about $200, so definitely well worth the money, and I'll never look back. So once the room was properly sealed up from the elements, I noticed that it was getting very, very humid in here, very musty and very dense, and that's why I picked up this dehumidifier here. I ran through it all in my most recent video of why you might want to run one of these yourself, but I found it to be an absolute lifesaver, as well as limiting the risk of mold. It does put out some heat, which helps me with heating all of these aquariums, but it's something that is definitely worthwhile picking up in any fish room. And to accompany the dehumidifier, I have just a simple column heater here. You can see that it's set on 26 degrees Celsius, and that's what I'm using to heat the room at this point in time. If I had the funds, I'd probably, instead of these two pieces of equipment, I'd get a split system air conditioner installed above the rear door. But that's just not something that's feasible for me right now. So if you are in that particular circumstance, I've found an oil heater to be really, really efficient. Just make sure to be safe if you have kids around or something that, or a pet even, that might sort of brush up against it, knock it over, because that's really where the risk presents using something like this. This one in particular is a DeLonghi Dragon 4, I think it's called. It has an eco mode as well, so I'm led to believe that it's really, really energy efficient, and yeah, it's run like a dream so far in here, so well worth considering an oil heater. I looked into other methods of heating, like a fan heater, a panel heater, and a few others, and from what I could find, this was the most efficient second to a split system. If you've got opinions contrary to that, let me know down below, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with this way so far. Now, because oil heaters or column heaters don't really circulate air too well, I've also got this pedestal fan here in another opposite corner of the room, which helps to circulate the air. So if you can imagine a square room, I've got pedestal fan in one corner, oil heater in another corner, dehumidifier in the other corner. So between those two pieces of equipment, the dehumidifier and the pedestal fan, I get a lot more air flow around the room, which helps to get a more even heat. So it's really, really quiet, pretty efficient, so and really cheap to pick up a little pedestal fan, so I find that to really help. And the last thing to consider when preparing a new fish room is going to be what you're going to place the tanks on. For this fish room here, I wanted something that looked pretty custom for what I had, so I built my own. Just built it out of simple 2x4s or 90x45 NGP10. Used some outdoor treated screws so that they wouldn't rust or anything like that. And I just painted these stands in actual fence paint to help protect the timber in case there was any spills or leaks of water, which is bound to happen over time. Another tip with this is to paint the bottoms of the racks as well, just to make sure water doesn't get on the ground and then be soaked up through the bottom. But it's a process that shouldn't really be that intimidating. I know it is from the get-go, but once you get into it, it's really nothing too crazy. When you're considering actually installing the racks, that is something that I've put in a bit of a future-proofing idea as well. So I know that at some point in time, I'm probably going to investigate doing automatic water changes. It's something that I've been interested in for a long time, but just with my timelines around this move and some other things that I had going on at the time, I didn't have a plan ready to go for when I moved in here, considering auto water changes. So what I've done instead is brought the stands out 100 mil from the wall to give me plenty of room to put some 90mm diameter stormwater pipe, which I'm going to use to drain my aquariums with. So definitely don't put your stands directly up against the wall if you think you're ever going to need to move them out, because it's an absolute pain. So from the start, I knew that I would want to have some sort of fill and drain option. So I just put the provisions in place to easily install that PVC without having to drain down all the tanks. And that way I can do it at my own pace and not really be worried about stressing out the fish or anything like that. Another consideration is going to be how you're going to turn all the lights on and off every day. And for me, the simple answer for that is using smart switches. I find them to be so versatile and so handy. For those one-off times that people come over, you can quickly turn your aquarium lights on without having to crawl behind anything or or wait for the timer to come on manually if you are even using a timer at all. And it gets some regular light in there versus having to remember to turn them on and off yourself. When I moved in here, I originally tried the Arlec Smart Grid smart switches, and they've been okay for the most part, but I have already had 2 out of 8 die on me, so that's really disappointing. The best ones that I've found so far are actually $9.99 from Aldi when you can find them, and they use the 2-year smart app. So if you can find those Born brand ones, then they're really good. But other than that, try and experiment and find the ones that are going to work best for you. So there you go, guys. That's pretty much it for the thought that went into this fish room. Hopefully you found this to be an enjoyable process, and hopefully it's giving you some ideas for future fish rooms of your own. The other thing that I would probably say is consider the use case for the space. For me, I wanted something that's going to be comfortable, that not just the fish enthusiasts can come and enjoy, but if I have family members come and visit, I can easily show them through here. And it's more of an enjoyable, casual space rather than something that's going to be jam-packed floor to roof with aquariums. So for that reason, I wanted to keep most of the area nice and open, have some artwork on the wall, and really just have some enjoyable aquariums rather than a place that's going to give me a lot of stress. So hopefully you liked the video. If you got any comments that might help other people, feel free to drop them down below. If you did like the video, it always helps me if you smash like, hit subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.